Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask Literature. If you're new here, I'm Omer Shabir, and this is the channel where we explore the fascinating world of literature from classic texts to modern movements. And today we're going to dive into one of the most significant literary movements of the 20th century, modernism. Modernism, as a cultural and artistic movement, emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, but its effects continued to shape literature and art well into the mid-20th century. It was largely a response to the rapidly changing world, and with it came a complete break from traditional styles and structures in both form and content. The modernist writers were deeply influenced by events such as World War I, the Industrial Revolution, and the rapid urbanization of society. They saw the world as fragmented, chaotic, and devoid of the stable values that had previously governed human life. At its core, modernism was about experimentation and innovation. Traditional narrative forms such as linear plots and clear resolutions were no longer sufficient to express the complexities of modern life. Writers began to play with fragmented plots, multiple perspectives, and stream of consciousness techniques. This experimentation wasn't just limited to prose poetry, too underwent a radical transformation. Poets like T.S. Eliot and Ezra pioneered new techniques that broke away from conventional rhyme schemes and meter. In fact, T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land is considered one of the quintessential texts of modernist poetry, presenting a fractured, disjointed vision of post-World War I Europe. Speaking of The Waste Land, let's talk about one of the key themes of modernist literature: disillusionment. Modernist writers were deeply disillusioned by the devastation of war, the growing sense of alienation in urban environments, and the collapse of traditional social structures. The modern world seemed to offer little in the way of comfort or meaning, and this is reflected in much of modernist literature. In novels like Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway or James Joyce's Ulysses, we see characters grappling with existential despair, questioning their place in the world, and confronting the stark realities of modern life. Another important aspect of modernism is its rejection of the idea of absolute truths. Whereas previous literary movements often celebrated the notion of a single, unified reality, modernist writers were more interested in exploring subjective experiences and fragmented realities. This is why modernist literature often feels fragmented or disjointed. It's not that the writers were incapable of telling a straightforward story, rather, they were trying to capture the fragmented nature of the modern human experience. James Joyce's Ulysses, for instance, is notorious for its stream of consciousness technique, where readers are plunged directly into the characters' minds, experiencing their unfiltered thoughts, memories, and emotions. Of course, we can't discuss modernism without mentioning its global impact. Modernist literature wasn't just confined to Europe and North America. Writers across the globe were influenced by the movement. For instance, in Latin America, the boom movement in literature took inspiration from modernist experimentation. Authors like Jorge Luis Borges and Gabriel Garcia Marquez played with narrative form and the idea of multiple realities in ways that directly drew from modernist principles. Modernism also had a strong influence on theatre. Playwrights like Samuel Beckett and Bertolt Brecht broke with traditional structures, creating works that were less about delivering a coherent narrative and more about challenging the audience's perceptions of reality. Beckett's Waiting for Godot is a perfect example of this. The play famously has very little plot to speak of, and yet it explores deep philosophical questions about existence, time, and meaning in a way that resonates with the disillusionment and uncertainty characteristic of modernism. One of the fascinating things about modernism is how it blurred the lines between high and low culture. While it is often seen as an intellectual movement, modernism was also deeply engaged with popular culture. Artists and writers began to incorporate elements of advertising, mass media, and everyday life into their works. This collision between high art and popular culture created a new, dynamic tension in literature and other forms of artistic expression. The use of stream of consciousness, for example, while a highly experimental technique, mimics the way our minds process information in real life, which is often chaotic, fragmented, and influenced by the media we consume. Now, let's not forget about the relationship between modernism and technology. As society became more industrialized and urbanized, technology played an increasing role in shaping modernist literature. The rise of film, radio, and the automobile all had profound effects on how people experience time, space, and identity. Writers like F. Scott Fitzgerald in The Great Gatsby explored how technology and the media shaped personal identity and societal values. Similarly, in Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, time itself becomes fluid, moving between the character's internal consciousness and the outside world, a reflection of how technology was altering the human perception of time. But as much as modernism was about breaking down old conventions, it was also about constructing new ones. Writers like James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and T.S. Eliot weren't just rejecting the past, they were actively creating a new literary language that reflected the complexities of modern life. While modernism can sometimes seem bleak or nihilistic, it was also a time of incredible creativity and innovation. It challenged readers to question everything they thought they knew about literature, art, and even reality itself. In many ways, the legacy of modernism is still with us today. Its influence can be seen in postmodern literature, contemporary art, and even in popular culture. The fragmented narratives and multiple perspectives that modernist writers pioneered have become a standard part of the literary landscape. And while modernism was, in many ways, a reaction to the specific historical conditions of the early 20th century, its exploration of fragmentation, disillusionment, and the search for meaning in an increasingly complex world still resonates with us today. So that's a brief look at the modernist movement in literature. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Ask Literature, and let me know in the comments what other literary movements or topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.